Let's hear a little bit from Eustace Mullins himself on the Rockefeller Syndicate and the history of the medical-industrial complex.
Which is the topic of my speech tonight, is a survey of our healthcare system. Now, when I started this book, I started from scratch because I had had practically no experience with doctors or hospitals in my life. And I really had no idea how they operated or what they were up to. And as I got into it, I really was horrified to find out what is really being done in the name of medicine in this country. Now, Morris Beale was a Washington sports writer and journalist who, when he found out what the doctors were doing, that he thought that was more interesting than any sports games that he had ever looked into. So he started to write about that. And he was the first person, as far as I know, to discover that the Rockefellers controlled all of the major drug companies. Now, when I first read that in Morris Beale, I said, well, this man certainly has done some good work, but he simply is going too far to say this. Now, one family could not control all of the major drug companies. Well, I researched it out, and I found that he was absolutely correct. And in fact, in Murder by Injection, I give the list of officers and directors of each of the major 18 drug companies in the world, and every one of those companies has 2 or 3 people from the Rockefeller interests on their boards. So the influence is very blatant, it's omnipresent, and they do control this entire situation. Now, the third man whom I benefited from was, of course, the late Dr. Robert Mendelsohn, who died very untimely last year. And it was Dr. Mendelsohn who coined the phrase, the Church of Modern Medicine, because he said that medical practice had now become a temple and that its practitioners were beyond reproach, they were little tin gods, and that the people had to do whatever they were ordered to do by these people. He elaborated on this by saying that this Church of Modern Medicine has 4 holy waters, which are vaccination, fluoridation, silver nitrate, and intravenous feeding. And he commented that as a practicing physician himself, he had found all 4 of these things to be of very doubtful merit in medical practice. But of course, that didn't discourage them. They still swear by those 4 things, particularly vaccination and fluoridated water. One of the last things that Dr. Mendelsohn said before he passed away, he told a friend, Clint Miller, he said, you know, I've had to come to the conclusion that all of our doctors today are nothing but drug pushers. And that was a harsh assessment, but I would tend to agree with him, because what the doctors are doing, they're simply writing prescriptions for the drug trust and loading people up with all these things. And in the Library of Congress, I found some very small, unknown books by various doctors, doctors who were dissenting from the medical practice over the past 50 or 60 years. One of them was a Dr. W.B. Clark of Indiana. And in his book, I found a very interesting sentence. He said, I never saw a case of cancer in an unvaccinated person. Now, he wrote this in 1936. So to me, that was quite a revelation. And other doctors have said the same thing, that vaccination is really a time bomb within the human system that can go off 5 years, 10 years, 40 years after you have the vaccination. You can have this time bomb go off. You can have a stroke, a heart attack, because it's always there in your system. You never get rid of it. And apparently it's always an alien force in your physique. Now, one of the things that I have found in the healthcare movement in this country is that we tend to be too modest about the situation. Some of them call it alternative healthcare. But I say that it's not an alternative, because the alternative really is death if you don't get away from this malpractice of the licensed physicians. So to me, the choice is between health care and unhealthy care. So what you want to find is the health care which will benefit you, and you want to stay away from the unhealthy care and the drugs and radical surgery of the AMA.